Welcome. Welcome to the another episode of Fix Virus Show and the Cybercrowd podcast. And the Simona Petros Monastery and my fancy sticks get us going here. So, what I wanted to talk about today is the ransomware paper that is written by the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Ransomware is risk management. So they put together a pretty good, concise paper that discusses what you need to do in relatively simple terms. I will try to make it even simpler, putting my own little spin on things. So in the abstract, it says, let's go over the ransomware and what it is. Ransomware is a type of malicious attack where attackers encrypt an organization's data and demand payment to restore access. Attackers may also steal an organization's information and demand an additional payment in return for not disclosing the information to authorities, competitors, or the public. This ransomware profile identifies a cybersecurity framework, version 1.1, security objectives that support identifying, protecting against, detecting and responding to, recovering from ransomware attacks events. So first of all, let's go back a little bit. I apologize for the last podcast, and I had the microphone set a little bit too sensitive, and so even my breathing was, because I have asthma. Sometimes that becomes it overshadows everything. So I'll keep an eye on that. I'm gonna put the filter down a little bit. So anyway, let's go back to the ransomware. So instead of reading to you this particular ransomware framework document, I created a blog post about it, and I copied and pasted the important parts and wrote the what I call the basic ransomware tips into 3 elements. So number 1, and you've heard me say this before, and this is, and if you're looking at it on the video, I also have a infographic that I created for one of my other blog posts. So the first thing we have to do is educate employees on avoiding ransomware infections, otherwise known as phishing awareness. So what do we have to do? We have to create a method of explaining to employees that they shouldn't open files or click on links from unknown sources. Avoid using personal websites and personal apps on work computers. Don't connect personally owned devices to work networks without approval. All those items are underneath educating employees on avoiding ransomware. So, what is the best way to educate your employees? Have them go to training. There is one way, from what I understand, is the best method, and that is to create a security policy, which basically sets the tone of how you expect employees to treat using devices in your network. It's kind of like, are people going to do whatever they want, or should they be careful with how they're running their daily operations? I've dealt with many clients in the past, in the 90s, the early 2000s, and I know how to act, personally myself. if a ransomware comes into our network, if malware comes into our network, it's not because I clicked on something that was bad. Even let's not go, how you can click on something with a low amount of chances of success. There are people in the network, proper people in the company, which then go on the network that maybe have bad habits. So how do you let them know that they should not operate devices, bad habits or good habits? They should be more mindful of how they're using everything. So basically, you got to have a security policy. You got to make them sign off on it. This security policy that says, don't open files, click on links from unknown sources. Don't use personal websites and personal apps on work computers. And it's up to you how draconian you want this. If they do it, then you fire them, or if they do it, they'll be talked to, etc. Those kinds of things, that's up to you. This is a pretty big one too. Don't connect personally owned devices. You want to be able to control the environment at work. People should not be bringing their home devices to the work network. They can do that at home. As it is, this is another issue of when they're at home and if they log in with a VPN, is it going to be a problem? So that's another whole issue. But don't let them bring in their devices to connect, and now they're fully on the network, unless there's many things you can do here as well. Should really have a guest network for devices that the people bring in, kind of like if your customers want to use Wi-Fi, that's a guest network. So okay, that's number one, is education. Number two is kind of like the IT department's responsibility. Avoid having vulnerabilities on systems that ransomware can exploit, which means you need to patch or update. And they suggest that you keep relevant systems patched. In other words, install as soon as feasible. You should employ zero trust principles. Now, zero trust is a whole other, much larger topic, but it's basically for the IT department to develop a more stringent policy within systems, within apps. Again, it's a higher form of control. Allow installations and execution of authorized apps only. Well, that can only be done. So, why is that important? Let's say you unknowingly you went on a website and it downloads something on your computer. Unless you have third party, in other words, unless you have special software that is on your computer which denies this software that was downloaded to run, you're now allowing unknown software to run on those devices. So again, this is more and more complicated as we get into it. Don't forget to inform your third-party vendors that may come in or may log in remotely into your network for whatever reason. So if you have, like for example, Home Depot had their HVAC contractor connected to their network and had to do some managing of their HVAC devices. Well, they got hacked. They were able to log in, and then they hacked Unknowingly, the attackers hacked Home Depot through a roundabout way. And this is where I wanted to discuss my infographic. It's not if, but when ransomware hits. It only takes one connection. So in LinkedIn, the more connections you have, the better, right? Well, in ransomware, the more connections you have, that's bad. Because the more people that know you, they could potentially connect to you. And if they get hacked, you could potentially get hacked. You get an email, at LinkedIn, a Facebook friend, and all the other social medias. Let's not get into all of those. I'm just picking a LinkedIn and Facebook for now. And it could be a blog post, could be the code on the website, could be from your cell phone if you're connecting. Could be all kinds of things. Whatever way people connect to you, and then you're on the network, if that then could be an opening. And this is why it's important to create a security policy to minimally let people know that it is important to run the way you run your operation, so the employee can't just willy-nilly open stuff. They have to think about things. Now, obviously it may not work right away, but at least you're making it important. It's important to you. It should start to become important to the employees. And if you notice something, I have a Gone Fishing hat. I just got this hat from Knowbe4, KNOWBE4, the number 4. And that is a company that does fishing awareness, basically. That's why they have a Gone Fishing hat. Anyways, so I said 3 things if you were listening carefully. So we just talked about 2, educating employees and basically patching your devices for the IT department. What's the 3rd thing that is important to deny ransomware from working on your environment? To have a backup, of course. You need to have a backup, and you need to restore the backup. If you don't test it, you don't know if it'll work. So what's the point? Well, that's what I've got today, and hopefully that will help you a little bit make sense of this complex topic of keeping ransomware out of your network. Get my book, Too Late You're Hacked. I'm working on another book. We'll talk about that some more. I'm trying to make it more easy to comprehend all these, very complex topics, especially to people that need to understand it. So if you're a person that understands this, you should tell someone that doesn't understand it. That's another topic. That's my cybercrowd method here. So I actually found out that there's actually a product called Cybercrowd by a company. I'm not trying to. I may have to change the name. I guess my little. What I'm trying to use is people coming together to help each other. So I thought hey, Cybercrowd, but whatever. I mean, if somebody else has the name, then I guess I have to change my name. Then change that name. Anyway, well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you another time. After, I don't have like a prescribed time to work on these things because these podcasts. So sometimes I have more time, sometimes I have less time. So anyway, The next time I have some time, talk about some of my blog posts, try to break down some of the complexity of IT. Well, thank you for listening. We'll have the Simona Petra monks hear us out here. Πάντοτε νικιαεί και στους αιώνας των αιώνων αμήν. That's it. Thanks for listening.